Chat's on. What's going on, guys? Excuse my big thumb there. Alright, so still trying to figure out how to do this tripod thing. Wanted to show you guys how I clean and service my reels. I'm going to give you some tips, show you how to save some money. There's guys out there who do a really good bang up job, really professional job, but these are some things you can do at home to save you a little bit of money. And this is something I do every few months on my reels, and it works good for me. It's not per se the most efficient way, and I did a video about this a year ago. I'm at work, so if I jump off, don't get offended. What's up, Tiffany? Country girl catfishing in the house. So if you guys got Abu Garcia reels, doesn't matter what make or model they are, if it's any Swedish Abu Garcia reel, this is one of the mid-generation 6500 C3s. I got an older one over here. If you got an Abu 6000, if you have a record 6600 HC, if you got one of those old record 60s, if you got an old 6500 C3, if you got anything, a Pro Rocket, doesn't matter. Any Abu Garcia round bait caster reel, all these parts are 99% of the time the exact same thing. There's a couple exceptions. I forget what's the one I'm thinking of. The Ultra Cast, some of them have a different type of spool spindle where the bearings are actually mounted onto it. They're a little bit different to or replace, things like that, but they're 99% of the time they're all the same thing. Catfish Bill, what's going on, man? So we're gonna get started. Some things you need is a nice reel oil. This is actually air tool oil that I picked up, and it's good for 100,000 RPMs on air tools. If it can keep that thing lubed without overheating and causing friction damage to your gears and stuff, it's gonna work great for your reel. Sucks being back at work, dude, I'm telling you. Scotty Hill, what's going on? Something else you're gonna need is a good grease. If you go to the Bass Pro and you buy some Abu Garcia grease, it's blue grease, looks just like this. I went to the auto parts store, got a whole tube. I'm good to go. This is actually, see if I can find it on here. Contains Metalon anti-wear friction fighter. I'm trying to remember to see the actual type of grease. There's certain types of greases that you don't want to use. But this, I remember this, I can't remember the exact stats on it, but this is literally Abu Garcia real grease packaged in something different. So you might not want to go get like ball joint grease, something like that. It might be a little too thick. But there are other alternatives where you don't have to spend $10 for a little bottle of Abu Garcia real grease. Some people like some things called real butter and other lubricants like that. But all you need is some air tool oil. And usually if it's blue, it's the right grease you need. David Taylor, how's it going? David Taylor is not too far from me. Something else you're gonna need is a little screwdriver. I don't know how well this is showing up, and the chat takes up about half my screen, but you need to this is a little Phillips head screwdriver. There's a tool that comes with Abu Garcia reels, or most other reels too. If you get like a Bass Pro Mega Cast, things like that, they come with it too. It's just this little thing with a flathead tip, and it's got a little wrench on it for the nut here. I just use some needle nose pliers. So as we go into this, I'm just kind of going to go step by step. We're going to wing it. I'll tilt my camera down so you can see me working on it, and we'll cover all the parts, what they do, and upgrades you can do to make your reel spin faster or have more drag or cast farther, have more spool spin, things like that. And as you can see, if I loosen up my drag on this, it's a little dirty. It's not spinning a whole lot. It casts good and it's smooth, but there's some things we can do to clean this up and make it a little bit smoother. So let me tilt this down so you guys can see good. And let's get started. Like your videos from Knoxville, Tennessee. Cool. So usually what I do is I start on the clicker side. This has a clicker here. Most Abu Garcias do. Anything above 6500 and up have a bait clicker. If you got a 5500, they usually don't, but you can modify them to where they have one. You definitely have the space for it. It just doesn't come factory stock, and all that does is when you got your line free spooled, lines getting taken out, it's a bite alarm. I'm gonna pop this thumb grip off. Good old 3-1 oil. Yeah, this is a, like I said, this is rated for up to 10,000 or 100,000 RPMs on this real oil here. It's really, really smooth. It's really light. You don't want to use heavy oils like vegetable oil, things like that. You want a good machine oil. There's oil specifically designed for this, and I have never had any issues with it. You can buy a gallon of it for like 70 bucks on eBay or Amazon, and it'll literally last you a lifetime. You'll never have to buy it again. I've had this little jar for about 2 years now, and you can see how much I've used of it. Hardly any, because all you need is just a few drops here and there. So if we breeze through this kind of quick and you have some questions at the end, you can contact me and we can go over to more detail. This is going to be kind of a quick video. I'm going to explain as I go, but the last video, it took me like 2-3 hours to go into deep detail on it. There's an older one out there on my channel, but it was a little blurry, so I wanted to try to use this Camerify app to give it some better quality. Now, as you can see, it's not too dirty. I'm not used to my lens being over here. There's a little bit of muck in there. This thing ain't too dirty, but we're gonna clean it up and make it nice and squeaky clean. The sound we all love. We use regular machine oil for clippers. Yeah, you can use that too. So right here you got this is what makes your clicker sound. There's different types depending on how old your Abu reel is. If you got an older 6000, it's literally just a metal flap that rests on this thumb piece here, and when it hits the gear it flaps up and down like this, and you can change the sound of that actually by bending it down or bending it up if you want it louder or softer. So that's something you can play with. This is your cog wheel. This helps with casting. Usually standard, they don't come with any bearings in them, but you can actually get a 2 bearing upgrade on this, one in the front and one underneath and behind, and it'll make it spin faster. You can also get upgraded cog wheels where they have slots, like a slotted rotor on your car, or skeletonized where they're just a couple of spokes, like spokes on a bicycle, and it reduces weight and makes it spin faster too. Right here too is another place that you can get bearing upgrades. They come standard on the 6600 HC records and the record 60s, and this is where your spool spindle right here rests inside here, and that sits in a ball bearing and causes more speed, and that's on both side plates. So we had 3 of these little screws here that go on the side plate that hold it to this. So we pop that off. This just falls right out. You got some spacers here that just sit on here right this to keep this from reeling, and that all coincides this cogwheel gear, if I can keep it in camera, with your worm gear here. So let's see, that's pretty much it for that. We popped that plate off, we popped the clicker off, we pulled the spool out, and in here houses a bearing on each side. Now if you have a 6000, a stock 6000, these will both be bushings. They'll just be two little brass wheels inside there instead of bearings. If you want to increase your speed a little bit, go on eBay or go to a reputable Abu dealer. Just buy 2 spool bearings in a pack. It's just a few bucks. Pop those bushings out, push some bearings down on each side here, and your 6000 just magically turned into a C3. And C3s are pretty inexpensive. This is the bearing. These are ABEC 9 stainless bearings. High-speed bearings I got from Jesse Laredo at Get Real Service in San Antonio. And that's my other bearing. Now when you're taking these apart, try to keep all your stuff separate so you know what goes where. Kind of lay it out in order so you can put it back together in the order that you pulled it out. If you're not sure where everything goes, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's almost like a puzzle. Stuff's only going to go in one way. And as far as these bearings go, they're identical. So if I took it out of here, I could put it in here. It wouldn't be an issue. There's my spool. This is your spindle. This will just pop out. We got a little bit of blackness there. That's just some muck. That'll wipe right off. This little clip here that goes onto this worm gear holds the worm gear in place. Next I'm going to, well, I guess it would be nice to have a flathead here. Oh, I can do it without it. Here we go. There's a flathead slot for that. That's what you need your flathead tool for, that comes for the reel. It just pops this loose and then you can unscrew it by hand. This holds your pawl. This is the pawl. This is what drives in the worm gear to move your level line back and forth. This one's made out of ceramic. This is an upgrade part. Stock, they come stainless. And ceramic's just really hard to wear down. It lasts a lot longer than the stainless ones do. It doesn't round off. And all these parts you can get on eBay for literally a couple bucks a piece. So if you wanted to get like a 7 bearing upgrade with a ceramic pawl, things like that, you're maybe looking 70 bucks for the whole thing. So go buy you a little cheap $30, $40 6000 and turn it into something that'll throw farther than a rocket. This is your worm gear. You guys see this okay? This is what your worm gear looks like. If you want to upgrade your reel to a dual bearing worm gear, it normally has a metal bushing here, just another metal wheel, and then this, or a plastic one, a nylon one, I'm sorry, nylon bushing here, and then this nylon bushing here. It'll look just like this on this side. This you cannot take off. You have to buy the actual upgraded worm gear that has the bearing on this. So if you want to upgrade to a twin bearing worm gear, you have to buy the separate worm gear, and again, it's just a few bucks. But this will be a stainless ball bearing here instead of this plastic or nylon bushing. All the gears on these newer ones are brass. And here I got my little bearing I got to pop out that I've upgraded. This is a different size bearing, and that will sit on there like that. Let me know if you guys are having any trouble seeing these. Next we're going to pop off the handle, and depending on what kind of handle you got or hand cap, these might look different. Some are just literally a stainless plate like this that's got like a hex head. They got like a little hex head slot in here that goes around the bolt, and they just slide right off. But they all serve the same purpose. It's usually got one screw that holds it, and then it keeps your handle from vibrating off. that thread, that nut there from from backing out. It's saying buffering may occur on my screen, so if you guys are seeing me lag, let me know in the chat, and I'll try to go a little slower. I'm just going to pop this off. Now this reel is actually missing a piece. Let's see how good this shows up here. Right here, you see like there's a little lip. Let's see, will let me focus. There's a little lip on the tip of that stud right here. There's a little C clip, and it kind of looks like this. Actually, you can see it on this, on the cogwheel, if it'll focus. You see this little that little middle E-clip right there? That's supposed to be on here, and it's missing because when you go to try to pop these off, you got to push them off with like a fork tool, or I'll usually two-hand it like this and shove it off. When you go to take that part off, I highly recommend that you get a Ziploc bag or a Kroger bag or a Walmart bag or something. That way when it pops off, instead of shooting across the room and you can't find it, it'll just land in that bag. I didn't think of that when I did it, and I lost it. But it's something that you can do without if you don't want to replace it. They're like $6 a piece. It's probably one of the more expensive parts. This is a little tensioner clip. Mine's being a little stubborn. That's just a little compression clip for your drag. Here's your drag star. When you're backing them off, they start out really super loose, and then they get tight for a second as you transition over the threading. And they pop back off. I don't know if you guys can see the stepped threading where it steps down a little bit here. As it transitions from the bigger part to the little part, it binds up just a little bit and then it frees back up once the threads align. Here's your spool tensioner cap. There's a tensioner plate in there. It's a little plastic and brass shim. Those shouldn't never really come out. If it does come out or you got one missing, just get you some plastic to beef up the stock, and it'll let you still put tension on your spool. If that's not in there, your spool won't ever tension up, and you'll always cast as a fast reel with no tension tightened down on it. So next we're going to work on these thumb screws. They're called thumb screws because they should only ever be thumb tight, and you should be able to pop them off with your thumb. I like to give them just a hair extra turn, another extra quarter turn with a screwdriver or some pliers. That way I know it's sealed up good. That comes off, and this is your frame. Something else to note is that all these parts on here are completely customizable. You can take any part off of almost any Abu Garcia reel and put them on another. So I could take a frame, if I had a black frame from another Abu reel and I didn't want this stainless one no more, I could use the black frame and put all these parts back together, and then I'll have a black frame with silver plates or whatever. My daughter's pole is actually a purple 6500 trophy collection, and it started out as a C3 just like this one. I just put different purple plates on it to match her pole. And you can buy all those customizable parts online. You can get little itty bitty drag stars, you can get powder coated, you can get custom colors if you want like a rainbow metal spool cap, if you wanted a gold spool, whatever. You can make it 100 different colors if you want, put them all back together. Or if you have something where this is stripped out here and you don't want to retap it, and you got another old junk reel sitting in the shed, you can take that drag star off, put it on this one, and it'll work fine. All these parts are interchangeable. The only thing that you want to watch out for is when your spool and your frame and your spindle, you want to stay to that series size. So if you got a 6500, you want to make sure you get it from another 6500 or a 6000 or a 6600. The 6 indicates the spool size or the spool width. So if you got a 5000 or a 4000, they get smaller, and as you get up to like 7000, 8 or 9000, 10,000, the big salt reels, bigger frame, bigger reel. So next up is these two little screws here. And this is where the meat of the reel is. This has the most components in here, and this is some things that you actually do want to pay attention to. We're going to set those two screws down there. There's two pressure washers here that you should just be able to shake out. And set those there. Those go on your drag, your drag star. It's actually called your drive shaft here. This is your drive shaft. And this drive shaft should all come up as one assembly. You have a little itty bitty washer here. And now we're down to the bones of the crank. So this here is your pinion gear, this little gear here. And most of the time when you got a reel that's kind of slipping as you're cranking, that's your culprit. The gears are rounded off and worn out. You can get stainless versions of these and upgraded stronger metals, but if you do that, you want to make sure all your gears match with the same metal. You don't want a brass drive gear and then a stainless pinion gear. You want to make sure everything is uniform, because the metal hardnesses are different and it'll chew up the other gear. This here's your push button system. I don't typically ever mess with this. There's not too much dirt or grime that ever gets down in there. The only thing I clean is around the release here. That's the only thing I'll clean and make sure there's some new oil. Some people like to lube it with grease. I lube it with oil. And set that out of the way. Now this is where you got the most pieces in one little thing, guys. You've got this spacer, which sometimes is a little hard to get off. This might be one of those situations where you want a bag too. Like that. Luckily I seen where it went, but I got it back. If you guys got any questions, or maybe you know a different way to do something, drop it in here in the live chat. If you're watching it later, drop it in the comments, and we'll get them all going. This is your drag system here. This is what lets the fish pull drag. It's a 6-disc system. Spread them out even here. So you got, let's see, how's that look? There we go. You got a carbon drag washer, metal disc, drag washer disc, drag washer disc. So you got 3 of each. So all you want to do is just lay them down like you're dealing cards. And it's good to note that each one of these metal discs are different. This one has a slot that matches up with this. This one's a circle slot, but it's got wing nipples on it. And then this one has a beveled center. And literally you just put them back in the reverse order, and I'll show you the exact order when we go to put it back together. This drive shaft gear actually comes off. There's a rubber washer in between it. And this is your core gear. Now let's take a quick second to note some things that can be upgraded. And clear my throat. Now this side was a little dirty. This is your instant anti-reverse gear. Sometimes they get worn out, especially in the 6000s and some newer 6000s and reels when they first came out. It used to be an anti-reverse dog, and those were placed on this hole right here. There was like a little dog ear that would catch on this gear. When it would try to spin backwards, it would stop it. So you always have some play. So if you got a reel that you can turn back like ½ inch or so when you're cranking backwards, chances are it has one of those. If it doesn't and it's got the instant anti-reverse gear, you might want to look at getting that replaced. Get it replaced. So things that can be upgraded. You have, this is just a little pressed on grommet. Same with these. This is where your spindle goes on both sides of the plate. You can get bearings in those. We already talked about the worm gear. You can get 2 stainless ball bearings on those. Your cog wheel can be replaced with slotted or skeletonized ones, and they can also get 2 ball bearings on each side of those. Your spool usually comes standard with 2 bearings in it already. If you got older ones like the 6000, they are a 1 bearing reel, and that +1 that you always see on the side of the box is talking about this. They count this instant anti-reverse as one of the bearings. Technically it is. So when you see 3+1 or 4+1, then that means it's got 3 bearings plus that 1 extra bearing. And usually it's just the 2 bearings in the spool, maybe 1 here or 1 here on the worm gear, depending on what kind of reel you get. And as the bearings go up, more bearings get put in different spots. And I believe the only one that comes stock with a high bearing count, let's see, would be the almost every reel that you get is a 3 bearing reel when it comes to Abu. So your any 6500 CS Pro rocket that you get, if it's a baby blue rocket or a chrome rocket or a black or a sunset orange, any of those rockets are all 3 bearing reels. No different than a C3. So that extra money you're paying for is literally for that extra tensioner cap on this side, because the rockets have 2 tensioner caps. That's all you're paying for. The exception to the rockets is the Black Edition rocket. It comes with 5 bearings. So if you're getting a rocket, get a Black Edition rocket. If you don't want to go through all this and upgrade your own reel. 6600 C4s or the old 6500 C4s. They used to come with 4 bearings. The newer C4s come with 5 bearings. The brand new C3s that have been out for about a year or 2 now, they actually come with 4 bearings. Let's see here, the Catfish Special, that orange 6500 C3, that is no different than this reel right here, stock. The only different thing you're paying that extra 30 bucks for, if you're buying it new at Bass Pro, is you get a power handle instead of this one, and then you get the orange side plates. That's all you're paying for. The drag's the same, castability is the same. If you really want to go high dollar, I believe a black rocket is $200 retail. You could spend $200 on a different reel called the Record, and the newer ones are called the 6600 HC Record. They come stock with 8 bearings. So you get 2 here in the spool, that's 2, 3 in the side plate, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's been a while. I think the 8th bearing. Oh no, wait, get it back. You get the 2 plates. That's 2, 4, 6, and then you get the cogwheel. I can't remember if it's a single or a double. But you get one in the cogwheel and then the instant anti-reverse. You get 8 bearing stock. Other ridiculous places that you can get bearings are in the drive shaft. You can get a drive shaft with a bearing, which would be right down inside here. That's a separate part you have to get. You can actually get handles with bearings in them, 4 bearings. So this spins faster. Why would you need that? I don't know. Maybe people have carpal tunnel issues. Not sure, but this spins just fine and it doesn't have any bearings in it. But you can get those. I got buddies who have like 14, 15 bearing reels and they're just ridiculously fast. And when you get to that point, you're either going to backlash or you're going to burn the piss out of your thumb. That's the only 2 things that are going to happen. You better have a real good callus on your thumb if you're throwing that fast of a reel. Otherwise, you're just going to backlash it every time. And you can make them so fast to the point where you have to put mags on them to slow them down. And then you're just contradicting, you're defeating the purpose. You put all that money to make it so fast, and now you're buying extra stuff to slow it back down. Just take some of the bearings out, and you'll be good. So all we're gonna do now, I'm just gonna take a paper towel, and we're just gonna wipe some of this stuff down. This reel actually wasn't as dirty as I thought. I think it's my other older one. That's pretty mucked up. This is what happens when you let your rods sit on the ground all the time when you're fishing. So I just give everything a good wipe down. This is probably the part that takes the longest. Make sure you get around all your moving parts, all your contact points. That Murder Inc., what's going on? Thanks for joining. Mike Cook, Old Man Fishing, good morning. Cat Daddy Fishing. Sorry I'm getting laid back to the comments. But everywhere where you know you're going to have stuff moving around, you don't want dirt to fall back in there and get trapped. Because not only can it slow it down, but it can actually wear down some of your gears. And a key place to look is down in this slot here. This is where your level wind sits. You want to try to get that pretty clean too. Or at least get most of it shoved out of the way. This thing wasn't too dirty, so I'm not worried about giving it a super deep clean. Something else you can have handy, if you want to give it a real good deep clean, is Q-tips. That way I can shove a Q-tip way down into it, clean it all out. Or if you got a gun cleaning kit, that works real good too. So if you've already got a gun cleaning kit and you don't have any cleaning utensils or grease or oil for your reel, you can literally use everything in your gun cleaning kit to lubricate it and clean it, and it'll do it just the same. And some of this stuff will actually look very, very clean, and then you go to wipe it and you'll get a bunch of, you'll start to get some dirt spots on your stuff. I'm more or less just wiping the old oil off at this point, and gonna reapply new lube. Just want to make sure there's no hairs or dirt or mud or grease, anything packed into any tight corners. You want to be a little OCD about it, but you don't necessarily have to overkill it. And it's not something you gotta sit and scrub. It all wipes off really, really easy. The only thing that might give you a fit is some grease. Have a bowl with dishwater in it to soak your bigger parts. You could do too. If you got a really dirty reel. Say you went fishing and you bring up your cast net or something, or you see something on your sonar and you fish it out and you find one of these reels or an old rod with a reel on it that's been sitting at the bottom of the lake forever and everything's all rusted up. There's a trick to it, and it works for old tools too. If you find an old pair of pliers that's rusted shut, get you a tub of oil, like a small bucket with oil. Just drop it down in there and let it marinate in there for 2 or 3 days, maybe up to a week. And when you pull it back out, it'll look like it was brand new, or a lot of that rust will actually come off. This was a pair of pliers that I had at my job, and they were rusted shut. So I let them sit in oil for about a week, and I pulled them out and they look almost brand new. So if you got something froze up with rust, you could go the route of getting WD-40 and squirt it every few hours and let it penetrate. But if you just get some regular, even if it's old used black from when you did an oil change, let it sit down in there and it'll free it up. Little redneck life hack. So I'm just getting in all these tight spaces the best that I can, since I don't have any Q-tips handy, and I'm not seeing a lot of dirt, so I should be pretty good. Something you do want to make sure is really clean is down the inside of this drive shaft, and I'm not seeing a lot in there, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But you definitely want to make sure there's no gunk in that. You can shove a Q-tip through that just fine. Just give it a little wiggle and force it through like you're cleaning a gun barrel part. Let's see what we got next. I'm going to use a new paper towel. Make sure your worm gear is nice and clean and shiny. You definitely don't want any dirt in your worm gear whatsoever. All your moving gears are what's super important. And if you're using paper towels or rags, or any type of cloth for that matter, microfiber, make sure you're not getting any fibers stuck in your gears or any debris caught when you're cleaning it. So if I'm using a rag and it's putting little fibrous hairs in there, you got to get that out, because that'll boggle up your crank. Let's see, we did all those. I'm going to check all these. There's always some difference of opinion when it gets to this point, because I do something a little different than most people. And they've stated their opinion on it, and there's some good ideology behind it, and I can see where they come from, but I'll show you guys why I do mine different too. This is one gear right here that will bite into your rags. It's got very profound, very sharp teeth on it. So just make sure you don't have any debris in it. If you want to clean any gunk that's out of your pinion gear, you can pull it up to pop it out of its socket and free up space a little bit, and you can get down in here underneath the gear. See it right here. You can get down in this with a Q-tip and get that stuff out easy, and then it just snaps back into place. This is where a lot of your old grease will sit. If you pack it too much grease around it, then it just snaps back into place. That alleviates having to take all this off, because this is one thing you definitely don't want to put on the wrong way, because then it only goes on one way, and if you don't put it in the exact order, it'll never sit right again. And then when you go to push your button in, it might not let it re-engage when you crank your handle. I use an old toothbrush for that. Yep. There's lots of different ways people do things, and it's just like anything else. There's 1,000 ways to do an oil change. There's 1,000 ways to do anything, and this is just my way. So for anybody who's never attempted to clean their own reel before, and they're paying somebody a bunch of money to clean it and service it, this could save you some money in the future. The good news is if you mess up or you break something by accident, especially when it comes to Abu reels, it's not like you gotta go buy a new head gasket for your engine. You know, you can just $5-6 you can get a ceramic pawl. $5-6 you can get a set of bearings. You know, I think the most expensive thing on here is these worm gears, and maybe if you like upgrade to a slotted cogwheel. The E-clips, those stupid little E-clips, I hate them things. Those are probably the most expensive thing you'd ever have to buy, because usually you only need one, and it's good to buy like 100 of them. You can buy them like 100 of them at a time, but you're not going to use that many for a long time. But that's the only way you get a good deal on them. Usually you just need 1 or 2, and they'll charge you $10 plus $6 shipping. So that's spinning pretty good. And something to note real quick, if you go to replace your cogwheel, if it's stock, normally they're pressed on over this spindle, and the only way to get them off is to break them, or very, very carefully take a razor blade and cut around that snap part to get it to slide off. But usually one way or another, you're going to end up tearing this up and destroying it to get it off. So be very careful when you put the new one on, and make sure that's what you want to do. That's one of those one and done type parts. They're not meant to come off. But if you do replace it, replacing or upgrading your cogwheel is one of the next biggest things besides spool bearings that'll increase your speed on your reel if you're trying to throw a little farther. This is a tight space to get into between the handle and the spool tensioner. That's usually where a lot of dirt will get stuck. So just try your best to get it clean. Make sure there's no gunk in. Make sure there's no gunk in your instant anti-reverse bearing. Some guys always leave this as is, and they'll pack it with grease. The thing to be careful about with grease, me being as a machinist, in my experience as a machinist, the thing with grease is some say you can never have too much. I gotta go. Great video, Tim. Alright, Mike, we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. With grease, the more you have, the more dirt and airborne stuff can get stuck on it. It's just like a big fly trap for dirt. So stuff will settle down into it, and then it gets mixed in with the grease, and then that gets into your gears and all your moving mechanical parts, and it can bog it up, slow it down, it can wear them down, especially if they're metal pieces or metal shavings in the air. And it's a lot harder to clean back out versus oil. Oil's something that can kind of be flushed out with soap and water. Grease is less forgiving when it comes to detergents and liquids. Usually with any type of oil, you can drop some Dawn in there, flush it all out, and then you can go back and re-lubricate it once it's fully cleaned. I think we pretty much got all the important stuff wiped clean. Little things like these little washers, you can literally just flip them around on the towel that you got them on. And I like to use these white paper towels because I can see the dirt really good, and I take a mental note of what pieces were the dirtiest, since my last cleanings. Are most barrel reels that easy to clean? Catman, yeah. When it comes to Abu Garcia's, how should I word this? I know a lot of people don't like Fords, but Abu Garcia's are like a Ford. If you have a 1997 Ford Ranger, you can go down to the junkyard and get parts of a Bronco, off of a Ford Taurus, off of an F-150, off of an Explorer, off of a Mustang. You can get any part off of any Ford, take it off, and put it into another. So that's what I love about these. They have a really good drag, they have a good durability, they're easily able to replace parts, they're easy to upgrade, they're easy to maintain, and there's a lot of little pieces here, and it looks like a puzzle. Hey, get back down here. Let's see if I show you guys this good. Let me switch the camera around here. Pieces, a lot of little tiny pieces, and it's like a puzzle, but it goes together than it looks, and we're going to be getting into that very, very shortly. Switch down. There we go. So, if I got my camera lined up right, I'm gonna light me a cigarette, and we're gonna get cracking. So if there's anything that I've left out, stop me. Or if there's anything you want me to explain better, stop me. And maybe what I'll do in the next video I do is we can talk about Abus very specifically. We can lay out a list of every make and model that's out there, what the different numbers mean on the side plate, and little things make a difference, like where this Made in Sweden stamp is located on the reel. Sometimes it's in different spots, different colors of the emblem, different ways to tell how old it is, looking up the foot stamp on it. And we can cover Abu Garcia's. I can talk about them all day. I've spent quite a bit of time since I've been using them, collecting knowledge and educating myself about them. And over time, it saved me a lot of money. And if anybody hasn't tried an Abu Garcia reel, there's other things out there that are just as good. If you want something cheap, you can go to Bass Pro and get the Bass Pro Mega Cast MCM 2000. It's very similar to this. It's a 3-bearing reel. It only has 8 pounds of drag, and it's not as identical as this inside. I wouldn't recommend taking those apart. They do have like a 1-year manufacturer warranty. You're only 40 bucks into it, so if something does crap out on it, you're only out 40 bucks. I would recommend just going and getting a new one or sending it out for a warranty replacement. Those aren't as high quality as an Abu reel. If you want to try an Abu reel, get you a 6000 or get you a C3. Go on Craigslist, go on one of these buy-sell trade groups on Facebook, find you a cheap, used Abu reel. They sell them all over the place. There's actually an Abu specific group called Abu Garcia Buy, Sell, and Trade. And it's very, very good for looking for different types of reels, custom reels. There's a lot of Pay Lake anglers and stuff involved in there because they like using these for fishing there. But that topic aside, just as far as finding a reel, it's a very good resource to find good quality reels if you want to spend a little extra money. For mint condition collectors, if you guys like to collect Abus. If you just want something cheap, there's guys on there that sell them dirt cheap. They don't want to use them no more. They got things called rash on them, which when somebody refers to rash, they're just talking about scratches and stuff on the side plates. So if they say, hey, I'm selling a C3 for 80 bucks, it's a little rashed, but it works like new. That means it's clean on the inside. It just looks kind of ugly on the outside, which is totally fine with me. I got this, I got one of these reels for, I think it was my red trophy collection. It was an older trophy collection. I got it for 30 bucks on Craigslist. And I think the only thing wrong with it was it has some scratches on the side plates. He was selling it cheap because it looked bad on the outside, but it works just as good as this, and I got it for $30. If you go to Bass Pro and you buy one of these 6500 C3s brand new, it's 120 bucks. If you get the Catfish Special, it's 150 bucks. If you get the Trophy Collection 6500 Custom, that's literally a red C3 for $140. So you're paying $20 more than the regular C3 because it's red. So there's ways to get out there and find cheaper reels, and you could go buy a 6000. They don't make them anymore, but it's literally this with bushings in the spool, and most times they're already upgraded on Craigslist or any other used site, but they'll sell them for like 40 or 50 bucks. And if they do have the bushings inside, go on eBay, spend 10 bucks on a couple bearings, and it's no different than a C3. We'll get into that in another video, and we'll go over what you can do to make them better or what's different with them. For now, we'll go ahead and get into making this back together. I just wanted to take a minute and have a couple puffs of my cigarette. And I know some people don't appreciate me smoking on my videos, but hey, this is my channel, right? This is Whisker, Stix, Fish, and Honey Badger don't care. He does what he wants. Alright, so where do I want to start? You can start anywhere you want. There's no specific way. It's just wherever you start, you want to make sure things go back in the right order. So this is where I'm going to get my oil out. And you do not need a lot at all. I'm pretty much going to empty this out. I'm going to put 1 drop. I'm just going to dab it right there. I'm just going to move this back and forth a few times, let the oil get underneath it. And then I'm going to wipe most of the excess away. I just want a film of oil. Just don't smoke at their house. Yep. My house, I'll smoke inside if I want to. Keeps me sane when I'm not on the water. So I'm just putting a film of oil onto this, and it just helps it slide easy. You don't have to have anything there if you don't want to. It's just something I do. I'm also gonna just put a tad bit right there. I'm gonna take this little itty bitty washer, and you guys see that good? That goes on this spindle. That's gonna lubricate. Friction reduction. Dab my excess away. I had a smaller eyedropper. This one's kind of big. It's almost like a medicine dropper, so that's really like 3 drops every time I put 1 drop. Next, I'm going to take my grease, and I don't have any Q-tip applicators for this part, so I'm just going to use my finger. This is just some blue grease I got at the auto parts store, and I'm just literally gonna, every so often, give it a light tap with some grease. And you don't want to cake it in between all those teeth, because that'll actually slow it down. So let's see if you guys can see this good. So I just got a little bit here and there, and that's probably almost too much too. That's my drive shaft gear. That's prepped. I'm gonna get my little drive gear and the washer that goes above the drive gear here. Little drop of oil on it. Drop that down onto that. And I'm gonna pre-spin it around, make sure it's properly lubricated. And then again, you wipe off the excess. Now I want you guys to know that I'm going very super slow with this. You can do one of these reels easily in 20 to 30 minutes. So if I wasn't taking time explaining all these things, I'd have been done a long time ago. I could do probably 3 reels in under an hour. And if you guys live close and you don't feel comfortable, or if you even want to ship it out to me, it's something I'd be happy to do in my spare time. I wouldn't be able to do anything as far as replacing parts that are bad, but if you just want me to take them apart, clean them, and put them back together and send them out to you, if you guys want to cover the shipping, I'd be more than glad to fix them up for you. Maybe make like $5-10 on the side. Charge you for my labor. That's ready to go, so this is just gonna make sure I get it in the shot here. It's just gonna drop down onto it. Now the way this works is, can you guys see the little clip right there? When I pushed it in, it got in between the teeth, and when this turns back, it's gonna catch that dog and push it back into place. That's how that works. Next thing that's going to go on is my drive gear, and since I've already greased it, some people grease up their pinion gear instead. You might have to give it a little push to get it to sit down, but that's going to mesh with the pinion gear. I'm trying to figure out how to get this good. I can't see through the chat, but that'll make your pinion gear spin. When you push in on your button, your pinion gear pops up away from it, so this spins freely, and then once the drive shaft cranks, it sends it back down into the gears. Next, we're going to do the drag system. So first, it's drag washer. Sometimes they might be rubber if they're older. Something you can do is buy carbon drag washers as an upgrade. And a lot of guys will put small amounts of grease on their drag washers. I leave them bone dry, and the reason for that is they do the grease for friction reduction. I believe that that causes it to slip more, and it makes your drag less than it really should be. So if these wore out from friction damage, I would just replace them, but I feel that it gives me a stronger drag. So if they're rated for 12 pounds of drag, it might give me 14-15 pounds. It grips better. Next is the metal washer with the slot in it, with the 2 flat edges on the sides. Those line up with your the shape of your drag or your drive gear stem. Then you do another carbon washer. Then you do the washer with the wings, and they will actually line up. It's not lined up right now, but can you guys see the holes? Where are they at? Right here. See the little hole there? That'll line up in there like that. Then you got one more carbon washer. And then you've got this beveled one. And it has a slotted hole that lines up with the stem. And it just goes right on top. Now your drag's good to go. Next, make sure I got the inside of this clean. Here's your bushing. You guys see that? I'm not used to my camera being tilted down. There's a bushing, and it has a slot on it too that lines up with the stem. So it only goes on one way. And you might have to force it down a little bit to get it down there to bite, but that'll go just like that. Then that is all ready to go. Next, I'm going to, and some people will pack grease into this, into your instant anti-reverse gear. I like to just make sure it's as dry as I can get it first, and then I'll put one little drop of oil down around it. Wipe, and that'll just seep down into those. That'll just seep down into those over time, and it'll keep it lubricated without packing a lot of dirt in between those gears, but it'll still give it lubrication and friction reduction. So I'm going to do one drop on each side of the side plate. let that work around. And now that's lubricated. This is ready to go on. That'll line back up. Put these screws back in. Now you should have 6 screws altogether. 3 are for the side plate, 2 are for your handle. They're all different widths and sizes, different lengths and thicknesses, so they can only go in one hole. So you're not going to put wrong screws in the wrong spot. We'll get them good and snug. And those are bolting to this, which is called the brake plate. Make sure, see how this looks? Make sure that your push button is actually in the slot. Tight, tight. I put my German on them, call it good and tight. And just a check. Turning, pinion gear's turning. That's ready to go. Next, we're going to just barely start the tensioner cap, just to get it threaded on there loose. You don't want it down all the way because that's going to push on your spool spindle. But it's easier to go ahead and get this started first, because once your drag's starting your handle and everything's on, it's harder to get around it. This is done. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the back on the frame. I guess I could have went ahead and showed these thumb screws ain't really screws. They're almost like pockets that feed over the frame, and the threads are on the frame, so it's going to feed over and thread into it. It'll only go on one way, so don't worry about that. There's lots of holes here, as you can see, but they only go in certain holes. Oh, and something else to note, to mention, this slot right here, can you guys see that okay? This is for thumb bar reels. So if you don't like the side push button, you can actually swap it out to a thumb bar, which would engage the push button mechanism too. So if you like that big flat thumb bar that goes all the way across, like on the 6600 C4s and the old Brutes and the Records, even the 6600 SXs that Bass Pro sells, the Chinese version, that's what that little slot's for. So you can modify these reels quite a bunch, quite a lot. We're gonna feed these thumb screws over, snug them up. Time is at 11:10. Gonna get them thumb tight, and then I'm just gonna take my flathead screwdriver, or in this case my needle nose, and I'm just gonna give it a quick quarter turn. That way it's got even pressure all the way around. You don't want to overdo it because you can strip the threads out. Because a lot of this stuff is either aluminum or stainless, and they can strip out. You don't want that to happen. You can get replacements for these, but they'll never work as good as the originals. You can replace them for crown screws, which would be like this, so you don't have this big thumb screw sticking out. That's another modification you can do. I like to use the original thumb screws. I've seen other ones in the past, and I just feel that they never hold as good of a grip as the original. That side's done. Next, we're going to do the spindle. I'm going to take just a small drop down there in the pinion gear. This literally just pops into place, and it'll stop on this. Pushes right down into it. and that's going to be butting up against that shim. So as you tighten this down, it pushes this farther this way towards the other end of the spool, and it makes it tighter so the spool doesn't spin as fast. So that's ready to go. Now we're going to work on the handle. So we have these two bushing washers that go over the bushing that's down in here, and it's key to note that they're cupped washers. They got a little bit of a bow to them. Let's see if I can get you guys to see the bow. See how there's just a slight hump to it. I don't think it really matters which way they go in. I've never noticed a change, but something you do want to make sure is they both got a cup to them. So I'll either cup them this way so they can squeeze together like this, or I'll cup them the other way so they can squeeze together like that. You know what I mean? They'll flatten out. One way or another, you want them opposite of each other. So in my case, I'm gonna make them do this. That way they got the pressure on the center instead of on the outside. I think one went backwards on me. There we go. You can just use a little screwdriver, kind of tuck them down a little bit. Make sure they're sitting down good. Next, we're going to do the drag star. Before I do the drag star, you're just going to make sure there's nothing in the threads. And I'll put just another drop of oil on the threads. Lubrication. All about lubrication. Here's where it can get tricky. This is one of the more tricky parts. You have to start it. The threads don't go all the way around. You only got threads on two sides. So you don't want to cross thread it. And getting it started is hard because nothing's got tension on it yet. So see how I just got like one thread to bite and it's just still spinning. So what I do is I just take these little needle nose and I hold it still until I can get the threads to go far enough, because once you get to a certain point, it's still going to keep spinning with the spindle. So now I have to, there's not much to bite on. You got to grab it from the top and then hold it until it gets the rest of the way down. Once you get past that that tenth area on the threads, you'll feel it free up. Almost there. Now it's, see how free it is. Now it don't matter. Now it's back to where it needs to be. So this is where the drag would initially be all the way loose. So I'll just crank it until it starts spinning with it. But it's still got super loose drag. It has no tension on it. Next is my tensioner plate. This also has a cup like this too. So it's going to sit down like this and it's going to flatten out like that to put pressure on your handle for when you're doing your drag. Or it puts back pressure, I should say. Tensioner plate, and if it's missing, you can do without it. It does affect it just a hair, but you can still use the reel. Next would be that little E-clip. That E-clip prevents the handle from coming off. You have to get that E-clip off to get the handle off. then you would put your nut on. So I'm going to get that hand tight. Then I'm going to give it another quarter turn. Now, depending on your bolt cover, this is just a plastic one. Mike Chavez, what's going on? This has a 12-point thing on here, so it's a lot easier to adjust according to the bolt or to the nut. Some of them have a 6-sided nut, a hexagon nut slot, so you got to line it up just right. But you want that nut to be in a position so when this goes on, it lines up with that bolt hole on the handle. Sometimes it can be a little finicky to get started because it is a very, very tiny screw. Now that's ready to rock. Now that that's on here, I can tighten my drag a little bit. We're ready to go. Looks like I missed a good one and now it's froze. Tim, do you not like the power handle? Well, seeing as I own 10 C7000 Abus, I need to see this. Well, Mike, you're going to get to go back when it's over and see how it goes. Do I not like the power handles? The power handles are really, really good. I've used them before. I like the, I don't know, this just looks cooler to me, and I get to have a longer fight with the fish. That's just my prerogative. All my reels have the regular handle. And you can get different kinds of handles. If these are called teardrop handles, the newer ones come with the paddle handles. They got that big wide paddle. I don't know if none of those have them. I got teardrop handles on all of them. You can get ones made out of glass. You can get ones made with, like I said, you can have bearings put in on both sides of these handles, so it goes really, really good. And you can just go like this and it'll spin for 5 minutes. I need to come back later and watch the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know how much this is going to help somebody, but I hope it does. And maybe here in the next couple of days or next week, when I get some more free time, we can actually sit down and have a discussion about different types of Abus, what makes them different, how similar they really, really are from one reel to another. And we'll go into a real in-depth discussion about Abu Garcia reels and why I like them so much. Some people really like the Cat Max. Some people really like the pin reels. And there's reels that are definitely a lot stronger. That'll have 20-something pounds of drag, 30 pounds of drag. There's types of Abu reels that don't have a level wind here, where you don't have this worm gear or level wind at all, and it's just an open spool. They call them CT mags, and you literally thumb the reel. They're great for offshore fishing, in ocean fishing, and for casting competitions. The level wind is there to just assist you in making sure the spool stays even when the line loads back up, but it does inhibit the range of how long you can cast, because it has to follow that and it doesn't just allow it to freely come off. So there is a pro and con to everything. Next, we're going to do the spool. I'm going to make sure there's no gunk down inside the spool. And again, if you're using paper towels or rags, there's some sharp edges on some of these, so make sure it's not grabbing any fibers. You don't want that to get down in your spots where everything's supposed to be free spinning. So I'm going to take a bearing, this one on this side where your brakes clip on. It has this little itty bitty washer, and it again is a cupped washer, so it's going to do this depending on your spool tension. So I like to make sure that it's cupped up. I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to be, but I like to make sure it's cupped up, and it will try to go down in there sideways on you. So now that that's in there, I'm going to put my bearing in. just gently pop it down in there so I don't scratch it up. A little drop of oil, probably too much. And a little fiber go. I don't know if you guys can see that on my finger. There's a little itty bitty hair from the paper towel. The edge caught it and ripped it. That could get down inside the ball bearing and tear it up. These brakes will be different depending on what reel you got. Older ones, they might just have 2. They might just have 1 on each side. Sometimes they might just have 4. This has 6. And these are intended to slide up and down with centrifugal force. So as the reel spins when you're casting, these will flare out like that. See how I got the one pulled out and the other one put? These will flare out and they'll catch. Let's see if I can show it. They'll catch inside this here and it'll slow the spool down. I leave all of mine pushed in. I don't use the brakes whatsoever. And I don't need that right now. This particular one just snaps into place. And it's good. Some will have a little wire snap ring that goes around it that you have to pop off. And again, when you pop that thing off too, you want to make sure you got a bag. Got it inside a bag so you don't lose that. Otherwise, this will never stay in place if you got one of those types of reels. And I believe my 6500 trophy collection, it's an older one, it has that. I have to save this and come back and watch it again. It's past my bedtime. There you go, Mike. It'll be on here. That's why I go live, so people who watch it, I can interact with you guys, and when it's over, if somebody still needs to see it, it's still there so you can go back as a reference and you can leave questions in the comments. See you later, Jim. I'm not Jim. I'm Tim. I know it's a typo. My other bearing is going to go on this side. This is my clicker side of the spool. I would say make sure you don't put the spool in backwards, but it won't let you put it in backwards. Little drop of oil. Now, I know I've just been saying little drop of oil, and I mentioned it before, but for guys who are just tuning in, 1 drop out of this dropper is like 3 drops. So I'm wiping a lot of excess oil out. So if you got a really tiny dropper, like if you go to buy reel butter or anything else from the store, it's already going to be the appropriate size, so you want 1 drop out of that. This is something that I filled up from my home on my own. It's got a really huge dropper. It's almost like what you would give a kid medicine with. I think each drop is like, let's see, 0.1 milliliters. So you just want a little bitty tiny bit. If you put too much oil, it starts to seep out and get all over everything inside your reel. You don't want the whole thing coated in oil. You just want the moving parts coated in oil. Otherwise, dirt gets collected and it makes its way into the inside of your reel, and then you have issues. Next, I'm going to insert my nylon gear, and the smaller gears go out like this. It's hard to see on this one. See if I can get it to show. Move my fingers out of the way. There's little itty bitty tiny micro grooves on this, and they sync up with the grooves. I don't know if it'll show it. Yeah, you can kind of see it right here. Little tiny grooves there. They go in and you will feel it snap into place. You'll feel it just give a little hit of a nudge, like it's seated. So this will go on here like this, and you're gonna have your spool pushing back out as you do it, because you're pushing on that tensioner shim that's in your tensioner cap. So you're pushing down on a tensioner and it's pushing back on it. We're going to leave that sit the way it is for now, because now we got to do the other side. We're going to get ready to wrap this up. Hope you have a good nap, Mike. Sorry we didn't get to see you at the conference too, by the way. That's something else I'm going to talk about in more detail over the next few weeks, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. I'm trying to keep all my fishing related stuff like this on the YouTube channel, and things that are related to the lights and the business aspect of Whisker Stix we're going to keep on the Facebook page, just so you guys know. So if you know anybody who likes watching this kind of stuff and wants to learn something, or is used to watching my fishing streams when I go do trips, this year that's all going to be on YouTube. So we want to make sure we get you guys all converted over to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on none of it. Next, we're going to work on the worm gear. The worm gear is one of the most finicky things to put back together. Nothing about this is hard. It's just a lot of free sliding and free moving parts you got to hold in place. Put the cigarette out here. Alright. So the way the worm gear works is your gear is going to slide into its sleeve. This little bearing is going to go on. It's going to go in here. Then you have to put your level wind on. Make sure it's synced up to the slot. Put your pawl up into the level wind. Cap it off. And then you got to make sure everything's sitting snug and synchronized. So the best way to do this is, I'm doing it upside down so you guys can see. So it would normally sit like this, and you feed it through, but you're gonna slide it in. This part right here faces down towards me to the bottom of the reel. And while you have it in there, you gotta slide your level wind on. Don't worry about setting it in a slot yet. As long as it's on here, that's fine. Make sure your bearing is in place. And if you don't have the bearing, it'll be a little plastic white nylon wheel. It would help if I put the sleeve on the right way. There is a right and wrong way to put the sleeve on. You see how that side's got the teeth? See those teeth? That has to go towards the handle side. So we'll put that in. Get the bearing on there. Then we'll do the level wind. And it has to fit in that slot. There's only one way that the slot will fit. Make sure that the open slot where the gears are exposed is facing down towards the foot of the reel, and you'll just wiggle it till you feel it pop into place. But when you pop this into place, make sure that your level wind is sitting down in this groove. And you guys see this groove right here? You want this level wind to be sitting in that. If it's sticking out, it ain't gonna work. So until we get that pawl in, this is going to be free sliding. Okay. While I got this on here, I'm going to take my clip. This clip here. This only goes on one way too. This part here, if you can see it, is going to slide over underneath this little gear. So you're going to slide it onto this clip here. You're just going to curl it up with the round end facing out here, and it's going to slide. Now you're going to see how it's sticking up over it. Let's see. See how it's sticking up over it? You got to push it down and get it to slide underneath that other nipple. Now that's going to keep this in place. That thing didn't go out all the way. I'm gonna start a house fire. So this is still free sliding. We're gonna take our pawl. This is the ceramic pawl. They come stock as stainless steel. This is ceramic. It's an upgrade piece. You're just gonna set that down in there gently. Doesn't matter what direction, you're just going to give this a wiggle until it slides that down and works its way into those gears. And you know it's on right when you can turn this gear and this moves it on its own. And I'll do this like this until I know I get a full range of motion. So I know it's not catching any dirt, and I know that it's sitting in all those grooves just fine. So now that it's in place, I'm going to move it out of the way of the foot. And I'm going to, this is one of the more harder parts if you got bigger fingers, is to get that started and threaded on. So I'm going to get that threaded tight. I think this has a little flathead thing on it. There we go. Although I might not be able to use it. Oh, yeah, I can. And you're just going to put some tension on it. So if I was using my screwdriver, if I had a flathead screwdriver, it'd be just 2 fingers until you can't move it no more with 2 fingers. If you make it too tight, it could bind it and warp it. So that's in there good and tight. Got my German. Good and tight. Now this is set. So as this spins, you're cranking your handle, it's turning the spool, which is going to turn the cog wheel, which is going to turn this gear and move your level wind synchronized with your spool. We're about done, guys. All we got left is this and the clicker. I use oil on all the moving bearings and parts, and I use grease on the actual gears. So you've seen I've only used the grease one time. We're getting ready to use it again. So I'm just going to take a little bit. Where's my finger? There's my finger. Just going to use a little bit, and I'm not even going to use all this. I'm just going to put a couple dabs here and there. Just want a very thin film. Like that. Well, let me spin the spool. That's all the grease I got on it. I'm not putting any grease on these big fat thick gears where my fingers are, because that's where my clicker hits. That doesn't need any grease. That's solely for noise. So that's all the grease I got on it. When it comes to my cog wheel, I'm going to grease up these teeth here and these bottom teeth here. So I'm literally just going to go around it and kind of pet it, almost like you're petting the head on a bird. I just need a tad more. And whether you're using grease like I got from an auto parts store, or you're using the actual Abu Garcia grease, you'll know you have too much grease on it, no matter what gear you're doing. Is if you go to put this together and you're spinning gears together while they're exposed, and you see it like kind of, you see the grease sticking together as it's coming off the 2 gears, you see like stringy grease pulling away from it, then you know you got too much. So those are lubricated. I'm going to put just a small bit of oil down into where that spindle goes. Right here, my spool spindle is going to go into there. So I'm just wanting a film of oil there, and this is all friction reduction. Some people will take grease and they'll actually put a film on the whole interior in here. You don't necessarily have to do that. Some say it's a good idea to catch dirt here on the plate before it gets to here. Some people say it just makes everything messy in there. I don't really do it. I don't mess with it. Next we're going to, that's done, that's out of the way. Next we got to do the clicker. Clicker's only going to go on one way. And it's going to go just like that. These are the new style clickers that come with most Abu reels you'll see today. Older clickers, like I said in the beginning, will have a flap here, and it'll have a different type of thumb slot. The older ones will have a slot where this will come all the way off. You got to do a little more to get this off if you want it off. There's an actual little stem of brass here. If I can remember to show you guys. I'm trying to look at this instead of the camera. There's a little brass stem here that holds this plate. This metal plate here. That little brass stem, you got to get that off to get this off to pull this out. On the older reels like 6000s, there's actually a slot carved into this to where you can just pull this out like this. Okie catfishing, what's going on, man? So these are ready to go on, almost. You got spacers. These spacers go on here like this. They keep this, they keep your clicker from doing this as you're reeling. Otherwise this will rattle around and slide all over the place. If you happen to purchase a reel that has this clicker that doesn't have these on it and they're gone, or you're doing your reel like this and you're following this video and you lose one of these, don't freak out, don't worry. A very, very simple life hack to fix this. Go get you some old wire out of your garage or shed, strip the casing off, and as long as it will fit over this, just cut it to length, strip you a piece of wire coating off, and then slide it down here, cut it to size. That's actually what this is, because I lost the original ones, and they will sit over these just fine. And they don't have to be flush. Mine aren't flush. You just want a similar diameter that'll slide over this easy. It can be a hair fat, it can be a hair big. You just don't want it too long. I lost the original ones. One reel never came with any, so I just took a strip of wire. I think it was like 12 gauge wire, maybe 14 gauge, and just basic electrical wire, and I slopped those casings over it. Now I got spacers again. So now that this is on, this is the last hard part. Bang. And it can be tricky because it's complicated to put on. It's just something you got to kind of wiggle a little bit and get the seat right, because this clicker slider, what should happen is when you push up on it, it raises up on it and engages this down into these grooves. This is what's happening when your clicker's going off. You got this pushed down in like so, and as you turn your reel, that's the clicking. That's your line out. Okay? So if you don't have it lined up just right, it's never going to click. So you're just going to line up your posts here with the holes, and your emblem right here should line up with this. So if that's an easy reference. And sometimes you might get it to go on just right, super easy. Make sure your clicker thumb is down in the off position. And as you're doing this, it might try to push this up. It might try to raise this up. So just be patient, take your time. Line your holes up. And I don't know if you guys can see this. This right here is actually being pushed this way. So it's not quite in all the way. And if I leave that like that, I'm never going to be able to slide it up and down. So we're going to take it back off carefully. See what's not lining up. This actually got stuck. What's going on here? There we go. This can be the tricky part, so don't lose your patience, don't lose your cool. Let's put these back on. Sometimes it's good to cock it back a little bit. This would be clockwise, so it's under the clicker, and then just kind of ease it up over onto it. There we go. Now it's in place. I'm going to hold it before I screw it and make sure I can slide this up and down. So I'm going to free spool it. Everything's spinning good. Look at that. It wasn't doing that in the beginning. If you pause this and go back to the beginning of the video, I could do that with my hand and crank the wheel real hard and it wouldn't spin that much. So I'm going to turn the clicker on. Everything's in good working order. Now all I got left is these screws. Last time I did this video, I think it was last summer, I lost a screw. If you happen to lose one of these, as long as you got 2 screws, the reel can still be very, very functional. You can fish with it daily, won't be an issue. If you just got one, you might want to hold off. You can go online, you can go to Abu Garcia's store, you can go to eBay. I would recommend eBay. And you can get extra screws. And these screws go for every single Abu Garcia reel there is that are Swedish. So whether it's a 7,000, a 5,000, a 4,000, a 6,500, doesn't matter. Now, if you got this really, really loose, I want to set this up like this so you guys know what you're looking at and you don't freak out. So say you got it loose, or you got it back in, everything's back together, you go to start turning your handle, reel's not moving. You're like, what the heck's going on? Well, remember when I said when we do this drag star, when you put it on, it's going to be tight when you first get it, and then it'll eventually turn to where it starts spinning freely and it loosens up. This is the stage where it's free spinning and loose around that drive shaft. And if you forgot to tighten it down a little bit and actually initiate your drag, it will look like that. So if this is happening, hold your handle, tighten down on your drag star a little bit, and now it's moving. Something else to consider is your spool tensioner. Right now this is at the point where it's just about to pop off. Some guys actually intentionally take this off and don't use it at all, which is fine. You can fish with it. I've done it for years. I had one that I didn't have a cap on for about 1.5 years. And it just came that way. I got it on a trade. It wasn't a big deal. $4 and I had a new one. If you tighten down on this, it's going to be harder to turn. I have this down all the way, so I actually got to give it some good force to keep it going. I recommend starting it off loose until you're ready to cast it, so you get a real good spin and it spins smoothly. We're not done with the reel yet though. We got a couple more things to do. Lastly, what I'm going to do, some people leave these bone dry. I don't. I'm going to put just maybe 2 or 3 drops in this worm gear. I'm going to put 1 drop of oil in this slot. And I put like a drop here, I put a drop here, and then I put a drop back here. And a lot of it kind of coated over this outer side here too, which is totally fine. What that's going to do is I'm just going to sit here and crank this for a couple minutes. And I'm going to let it all lubricate, because that ceramic and that oil are just going to be super, super sound. So all I've really done I put a thin, that 1 or 2 drops as it spreads out over time is going to put a real thin film of oil over that worm gear. It's going to keep it from inhibiting rust over the years. It's going to allow it to move freely and slide easier. It's going to lubricate so it's not dry metal on dry metal. It'll spin quieter. It'll cast faster. And it just lets things run more efficiently. I'm going to make sure there's no excess on anything. And this 6500 C3 is in great condition. Now this particular reel has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bearings. This is a 6 bearing 6500 C3. This would be considered a full 7 bearing upgrade if I had the stainless steel bearing on the other side of the worm gear. The only reason I have this reel upgraded the way it is, as long as with my come here. With my older C3 here. This is an older model 6500 C3. You can see it's really super dirty. This one definitely needs cleaned. This is also a 6 bearing with a ceramic pawl upgraded C3 too. This one is a very, very old 6500 C3 trophy collection. This is a standard, a 4 bearing reel. And this is up to a six bearing with a ceramic pawl, I believe too. I don't know, this one might have a stainless pawl. But this is the 6500 TCCF trophy collection. And this is the reel that I got for 30 bucks. The only reason that these are upgraded the way they are is I got them like that on trade. And the person who traded them to me, I traded one 6600 record 60, one of the older record reels, for both of these C3s. And I guess he didn't know much about them. He said they cast good and they cast real far. They're real smooth reels. He said, I'll trade you both of them for that record because it's got the 8 bearings in it. He wanted a high bearing reel. And I said, okay. We met up, we tested them out, we traded. And I was under the impression that they were just stock C3s. So I thought it was a fair trade. When I got them home, anytime I get a new reel, anytime I buy a reel, I don't care if I buy it brand new from Bass Pro. Anytime I get a reel at all, whether it's a trade or a sale or somebody gives it to me, whatever. Anytime I have a new reel in my hands, second I get home, I take it apart and I do what we just did. And so when I got these home, I took them apart and I noticed, hey, this has got a ceramic pawl. This has got a dual bearing cogwheel. This has got a single worm gear bearing. This is a 6 bearing upgraded reel with a ceramic pawl. So I came out really good ahead. If you pay somebody to do a 7 bearing upgrade, it typically runs around 60 to 80 bucks, depending on who you go to. Some guys could do more. And it depends on what kind of bearings they put in it, and we can get into that too later on in another video. These have ABEC 9 stainless high-speed bearings in them. That's not what came with them. They were just stock bearings, which are usually ABEC 5s. I got ABEC 9s off my buddy Jesse Laredo, and we swapped them all out with ABEC 9 high-speed bearings. They're not ceramic bearings, which is totally okay. It's another tad bit upgrade. They go a little bit smoother and faster and last longer, but ABEC 9's stainless spool bearings is definitely a jump up from a stock C3. This reel, as we just did, will outperform a 6500 CS Black Edition Pro Rocket. So You can buy the rock at $200 brand new off of Abu, or you can trade somebody on Facebook or Craigslist for one of these older C3s, pay $50 to upgrade it, and if you bought the reel for $40 and you paid for a $75 7 bearing upgrade, $115, and that is going to outlast a brand new rocket or a record reel, even though they got 8 bearings. And I just can't say enough about Abus. If you want to get a good Abu, get you an older one. They were made better. They were made out of better material. They had a better build, less plastic. And some of these are, that other C3 I got, I believe it's from 1984. So that reel is actually 2 years older than me. I was born in 86, and it still works as good as the new ones. And I use them daily throughout the fishing season. So if you guys are interested in reels, you want to learn about cleaning them, feel free to ask me any questions you may have in the comments. Maybe later on in a different video we'll sit down and have an actual in-depth discussion about the history of Abu reels, what makes them so good and makes them so versatile and makes them so interchangeable, and why I like them so much. They're just an all-around great reel. There's definitely reels that are higher quality, that will last a long time and even perform better. But this is a very good happy medium for the price. If you want to spend $400 or $500 on higher end reels like the Calcuttas and Daiwas and the Lus, they're out there. Pins. But if you want a real basic good reel that you can spend less than $50 on and make them 3 times more proficient than they already are out of the box, then this is a good way to go. So they're real easy to simple to work on. It looked like a lot. It almost looked like we were putting together a watch with all the small little parts. But a lot of you guys probably mess with guns and rifles and stuff too in hunting season. So complicated little parts really are harder than it seems. When you're messing with them. So we're going to off. If you got any questions, I'm going to be here with my slime line that we got from the Catfish Conference. That's getting ready to go on here. We got a 30-pound spool here. We're going to lace these all up with over to be doing this and getting ready for the season. Once you do this, you're going to be pretty much good for the whole season. So this is the time of year where I'm going to be doing this. I'll do it every few months. And they come out amazing. I'll be doing a review on the slime line while I got it here on a video. Caleb Page, Catch the Fever, if you guys are watching or happen to ever see this. We'll be doing a review on this Stix. We are going to see how this reacts with Whisker Stix. I'm going to be testing an ultraviolet edition of Whisker Stix. We're going to make some prototypes, and this stuff responds very, very well to black light and absorbs ultraviolet light very good. And you guys have seen the pictures of this stuff glowing like a lightsaber. So I want to see how good my different colors align with this line without having the need of a big expensive black light. So that's something that's going to come in the future. I'm going to get ready to lace this up, and then I still got 2 other rods to do. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks for taking the time. I guess I could. Thanks for watching, guys. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. We got a lot of cool content coming out this year. I'm going to be spending a lot of time building up the YouTube content and starting to separate from the Whisker Stix Facebook page when it comes to fishing related stuff this year. So share it with your buddies. You guys know anybody that might be interested in this kind of stuff? We'll be doing lunch break bites, things like that throughout the year on YouTube, and live fishing streams. I'm talking 2, 3, 4 hour long fishing trips during the week. So that'll be something that you guys can sit and enjoy with me on the water, and we'll talk and we'll have a good time. And I'll take you guys out and show you where I go and what I do. Leave a comment if you got a question, or if you got a tip that something I maybe didn't see, maybe something new. And we'll see. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next video.